Don't you need anything else?
Good morning. Thank you for sticking with us while we worked out some minor technical difficulties. Welcome to the ILSOY Advisor webinar on managing Roundup Ready 2 Xtend soybeans in 2016 and beyond, brought to you by the Illinois Soybean Checkoff. My name is Ann Horak, and I'll be moderating the webinar today. A couple of housekeeping items. If you included your CCA number when you registered for this webinar, and you stay with us for the entire presentation, your number will be automatically submitted for one CEU in Integrated Pest Management. If you are listening to a recording of this webinar, you will need to go to certifiedcropadvisor.org, log on into your account, and apply for a self-study credit. Also, there will be an opportunity to ask questions during the webinar by submitting your question in the chat feature. There will be a time for question and answer at the end of the presentation. Without further delay, I'd like to introduce Lance Tarochione, technical agronomist with Monsanto. Lance has over 23 years of agronomy experience. This knowledge and his background in weed management, seeds and traits makes him well qualified to lead this discussion on the newly approved Roundup Ready 2 Xtend soybean system. So with that, Lance, you can take it away.
Okay, thank you, Ann, and again, appreciate everyone's patience. Apologize for the technical difficulties. Just so you know, it was not Ann that was the problem, it was Lance. So Ann is being agile here this morning, and we found a workaround to the technical issue we were having. So she will be advancing slides for me, and hopefully you'll all be able to see the presentation on the webinar. And appreciate you joining today. My background, I've been with Monsanto since 1993. And actually the first summer that I spent with Monsanto, I was a research biologist at our research farm in Monmouth, Illinois, and was involved in making herbicide applications to some of the first field trials on the original Roundup Ready soybeans, which came to the market in 1996. And I remember on the home farm back then in the mid-90s, we were using prowl pursuit-based program and struggling with lamb's quarter and some nasty new weed we didn't even really know what it was that today we know as water hemp. And when the Roundup Ready trait came to the market in 1996, that was a big deal for soybean weed control. And fast forward 20 years here to another big deal in soybean weed control would be the approval of the Roundup Ready 2 Xtend soybean cropping system. And so that's what I want to update you all on here today. Happy to answer any questions that you have as we go through, and just follow Ann's procedures for asking questions. So today I want to touch on, just give you the latest on where we stand on trade approvals, where we stand on herbicide registrations, talk a lot about stewardship requirements for the 2016 growing season, touch a little bit on what will be available in 2016, and then follow up with some weed control recommendations for 2016. And thanks to Illinois Soy for hosting our webinar here this morning. So if you want to advance to the next slide, Ann. There's certainly a lot of importance and priority placed on good weed control. First and foremost, we need good weed control to protect our yield potential. There was an interesting study published recently, a Wheat Science Society bulletin that estimated that nationally about 50% yield loss from weeds with no control, and the Illinois data actually showed about a 60% yield loss if weeds were not controlled at all. So obviously weed control is critical to protecting yield, but equally important, and in some cases, unfortunately, even more important. Clean fields are a great source of farmer pride. I've known farmers personally that gained and or lost rented land because of having either really good weed control or having a weed control issue. Also important for managing seed banks and weed shifts and resistance and weed populations in general, and then also having the ability to chemically control weeds effectively and economically, really enabled the widespread adoption of no-till soybeans and all the environmental benefits and soil savings benefits and conservation benefits that go along with that. So next slide, please, Ann. So our big announcement here lately on February 3rd, we received approval from China for import approval for the Roundup Ready to Xtend soybeans, and made our launch plans for the 2016 crop year. This is something that we've been working towards for a couple of years now. We actually were ready to come to market in 2014 with germplasm, and has taken longer to get those approvals in place than we had hoped for. We'll touch more on that here in a little bit when we talk about the germplasm piece. Just to update, we are still waiting for the full approval of the stack trait in Europe. Europe regulates traits, stacks, differently from individual traits. So they've obviously, the Roundup Ready to Yield trait has been approved for a long time in the EU. The dicamba tolerance trait has also been previously approved by the EU, and they are still in the process of approving the stack. It's in the final stage of approval. The science community in Europe, the regulatory body, has signed off on it, and now it's going through kind of a more administrative process to formalize that approval. We can't guarantee when that approval is going to come, but we certainly expect it will be in the very near future. All of our other export countries that are major markets for us, such as Japan and Korea and Mexico and Canada and other countries of importance from an export status, have already approved the dicamba tolerant soybeans as well. So we get this EU approval in place, which should be coming in the very near future. We'll be good to go from a trait approval standpoint. Okay, next slide, Ann. Okay, so that's kind of the latest on the trait approval standpoint. The other piece of the system is obviously the new herbicide formulations and the label changes required to allow in-crop applications of dicamba. And I want to spend a fair amount of time here. This is a very important conversation to have, and a little bit of a disappointment for some producers possibly who were looking forward to using a new dicamba herbicide formulation in their Roundup Ready to Xtend soybeans in 2016. At this time, there are no dicamba formulations currently approved for in-season application by US EPA. And when that says in-season, that doesn't necessarily mean just on over the top of soybeans. That includes Burndown applications as well. Obviously it's a violation of federal and state law to apply any registered herbicide in any manner inconsistent with its labeling. Farmers, retail dealers, and Monsanto company personnel must comply with the law and cannot make any off-label recommendations or encourage any off-label use. It should be noted that actually in Canada, every country's got their own regulatory process. There actually are the new dicamba formulations do have regulatory approval in Canada, and so this year in Canada, growers will be able to experience the complete system of the seed and the herbicide component to go with that. Next slide, please, Ann. I'd like to spend a little bit of time around the labeling issues on herbicides. This is something that we take very seriously, and we're going to ask and expect and hope that other people take equally seriously. Herbicide labels are laws, not helpful suggestions, and it really doesn't matter how much we want to do something. Growers have an opportunity here to demonstrate they can be trusted to be good stewards. Please don't put yourself or your herbicide supplier at risk. The long-term risks greatly outweigh any short-term benefits of making an off-label application. The EPA treats these violations extremely seriously, and there's serious consequences for a grower, for a registrant like Monsanto, or for an ag chem retailer that would be involved in an off-label application. Next slide, please, Ann. We get a lot of questions about Burndown. If you know your herbicide labels well, you know that dicamba formulations are currently labeled for Burndown applications ahead of regular soybeans, and that label has not changed. That label will not change until we receive new labels for the new uses and the new formulations. So the way that label reads currently, you can apply a product such as Clarity if you're using a no more than a 16-ounce rate, and you're at least 28 days prior to planting, and you receive an inch of rainfall or irrigation between that application and planting, that would be a labeled use of Clarity currently. So you could use Clarity in that manner currently, on your dicamba soybeans, but it cannot be within 28 days of planting, and you need to follow that rainfall restriction. And we get a lot of questions about that. Maybe I can use Clarity in a Burndown, and you can, but it has to be consistent with that current label language, with that 28-day plant back restriction being adhered to. Next slide, please, Ann. So where we're at from a next step standpoint on the labeling remains in the late stages of an Environmental Protection Agency review. We have to begin a public comment period, and once the public comment period starts, that sets in the process in motion. Until that public comment period officially starts, it's difficult to predict when a label might be granted. It's unlikely at this point, considering the public comment period has not started yet, and being able to make some assumptions about how long that process is likely to take. It's unlikely that there will be a herbicide label in time for in-crop applications in 2016. There's still a remote possibility that for some later applications might perhaps be an opportunity, but it's going to be well into summer at the earliest before we would receive that label. We're certainly asking for EPA to let that public comment period begin. See no reason why it can't begin at this point. When that does start, we'll certainly be talking with farmers and retail dealers and other people that have an opinion on whether these products ought to be registered, to where you can go to make comments on that public comment period. And we fully anticipate that those who have concerns about the labeling of these products will be making comments, and we want to make sure that both sides are being represented. That process, EPA actually reviews every single comment that they receive. Oftentimes the comment period is extended when they're getting a lot of comments, which we anticipate on this technology. They will get a lot of comments. So we'll probably go through a couple comment periods. After the comment period's in, then they take 30 days to review all the comments, and then they issue a statement. And after another 30-day waiting period, that's kind of when a federal registration could be granted, and then you start going through the state labeling process. Some of those happen very automatically. Some of them take a little longer, but there's a lot of steps to go through to get to a label. And the first thing that needs to happen to complete that process is we need to get the public comment period started, and unfortunately that hasn't begun yet. So we're hopeful that will start soon. Next page, Ann. So from a stewardship focus, we're doing a lot of education. That's part of the reason that I want to be involved in this webinar today, just so people could hear the proper way to position the technology in the marketplace in 2016. We're spending a lot of time educating dealers, seed dealers, retail dealers, growers as well on the appropriate way to manage the product. If you go to the next slide, Ann, shows on the we're currently packaging product, and there's actually going to be a fairly noticeable red and kind of a warning statement on the seed label on the bag or on the mini bulk bag that talks about there are no labeled products for in-crop applications. Again, that the phrase in-crop to me is a little bit unfortunate, because I think that almost insinuates that Burndown is different, and Burndown's really not different. That's considered in-crop as well. So basically, if you're within 28 days of planting, that is in-crop. And so don't interpret in-crop. I think some people think they hear in-crop, they think in-crop and over the top are interchangeable terms, and really they're not. In-crop would include kind of basically the whole growing season. You go on to the next slide, Ann. So for this year, we're going to be following our current weed management recommendations as part of the Roundup Ready Plus system. And so, we're going to be recommending, a lot of the same, basically the same herbicide program that we would recommend on current Roundup Ready to yield soybeans is the herbicide program that will be recommended on the Roundup Ready to Xtend soybeans for the 2016 growing year. So we're going to want to start clean with effective full width tillage or a good burn down that probably includes 2,4-D. We're going to use traditional pre-emergent herbicides to get soil residual control. We're going to be using Roundup and Roundup tank mix with other modes of action, plus in some cases some additional residual herbicide applications applied post, using tank mixtures of products with multiple modes of action. So not really anything new that you haven't heard before, just good weed management practices like we're recommending in the Roundup Ready to yield system currently. Next page, please, Ann. This is through the Roundup Ready Plus system. We've been recommending a lot of other products. Most of these products are not Monsanto products. They're products of our partners of ours that we promote as residuals down or tank mixtures post-emergence to get full season weed control, to help out with some tough to control species, to help manage resistance, to help give us that residual piece that we need. And really, I think this is a good place to make the point that when we do have the full Xtend cropping system available, we really see Roundup Ready to Xtend as being an additional tool for weed management that's part of the Roundup Ready Plus system. So we're not going to quit putting on pre-plant residuals. We're not going to stop recommending overlapping residuals. Dicamba actually obviously has some residual soil activity, but it does not have near the level of soil residual activity that we need for season-long weed control. So it's a nice to have thing, but it's not going to replace the other products that we're currently using. So we don't really want to go back to a system where we're just relying on nothing but glyphosate and dicamba to get weed control, because we don't really want to go down that path. It's not the best, most sustainable practice for the grower. And so we're very hopeful that the good weed management practices that people are currently utilizing, when we have the dicamba options, we add those to the system. We don't just quit doing what we're doing now and switch to that. Next slide, please, Ann. So just as an example of a typical program that we would be, recommending this year on all Roundup or Roundup to Xtend soybean acres would be a, start clean with a tillage or a good burn down, get a good pre-emergent soil applied product down to give us a good amount of water hemp residual, followed by an in-season or an in-crop application, over-the-top application of Roundup plus a tank mixture. This example is Warren Ultra, which you get 3 modes of action there. You've got additional residual from the Warren. You've got a PPO component that's part of the Warren Ultra to help pick up any glyphosate resistant water hemp, let's say, that might happen to be there, and then you've got your Roundup to pick up the rest of your susceptible species. So this would just be a fairly typical example of a program that could be used on any Roundup soybean acre. Will be widely used on Roundup Ready to Xtend soybean acres this year, and hopefully looking forward to 2017 when we've got labeled products available. Really you're going to You might be spraying a Roundup dicamba premix, and there won't probably be much else that changes in that recommendation. And you're going to add that piece into the mix and keep the other residual components to give you that good season-long control and good weed management, good stewardship. Next slide, please, Ann. So I guess here's the question you might have in your mind. Well, gosh, what's the point in planting Roundup Ready 2 Xtend soybeans in 2016 if I can't spray them with anything different than what I'm spraying on the rest of my beans? And that's a fair question. And for some people that were really looking forward to using dicamba in crop this year, that has been a hard pill to swallow, honestly. But I do think there are good reasons to take a look at the technology this year from the seed side of things, even though you can't really experience the full system yet. And the analogy that I use is if you're going to buy a new vehicle, how many of you are going to buy a new car or pickup truck or whatever without taking it for a test drive to see if you like it? And that's the way I look at the 2016 season for Roundup Ready 2 Xtend. We've got a lot of good products available. A lot of these products are the same products that will be available in 2017, and our expectation is that when that herbicide component is ready to go and you can utilize the full system, typically I don't know a lot of growers that do a few acres of conventional soybeans and a few acres of Roundup Ready soybeans and a few acres of Liberty soybeans and a few acres of Roundup Ready 2 Xtend soybeans. Typically, for simplicity's sake, guys tend to, use one herbicide program across their operation. If you like to grow conventional beans, that might be all you grow. If you like Liberty beans, that's probably all you're doing. If you like Roundup beans, that's probably all you've got. You might be buying from different companies. You might have different herbicide programs. There might be differences there, but it's probably the same base weed control platform. And our expectation is that, when growers get comfortable with the dicamba technology, they'll probably very quickly, convert their weed control program over to that. And if you are thinking about aggressively, adopting that new technology in 2017, good opportunity to take a test bin with the varieties in 2016, see if you're comfortable with the germplasm, see how it performs on your farm from a yield standpoint, see how you like the standability, the harvestability, all the other things that you're worried about with a seed purchase. And then you'll be in a much better position to maybe make a more of a change in 2017. There's a lot of good germplasm available, a lot of good genetic diversity. We were actually, as I mentioned earlier, prepared to come to market with germplasm in 2014. So we've had 2 additional breeding cycles to improve the performance and quality of the germplasm. I'm going to show a little bit of data here in a minute to see, what you might expect to see from these products. But if you want to go to the next slide, Ann. So our, the newest germplasm that we have available, is going to be the Roundup Ready 2 Xtend material. Soybean breeders started breeding with Xtend and making crosses with the new material, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And it's been, coming through breeding. We had good products ready to go in 2014. Obviously, that's kind of the positive side of the delay from a grower perspective is it's given the seed industry an extra 2 years that they didn't expect to have to breed even, better germplasm into the new trait platform. So just looking in Illinois, this is all data from Illinois. These are this is not intended to be an Asgrow commercial, but this are products that I had access to data on. So Asgrow is going to have 12 products in the marketplace, ranging from a 2.5 to a 4.5 maturity, available for 2016. And from our breeding program, we've got just shy of 1,500 head-to-head comparisons over the past 3 years with these 12 Roundup Ready 2 Xtend products versus the Roundup Ready to Yield products that we currently sell. And when you look across that whole group in the state of Illinois, the 12 Xtend products have a 2.1 bushel advantage over what we're currently selling, with an advantage, with a 63% win rate. If you look across those 12 products, I guess if you want to say the weakest one of the 12 has about a 0.6 of a bushel advantage over what we've compared it to, up to the strongest one, a 4.7 bushel advantage versus what we've compared it to. And so I'm very confident in the germplasm, excellent agronomic characteristics in these products, a good genetic diversity as well, so they're not all so closely related that you're taking a chance by planting several of them on your farm. And so we're going to see good yield performance from the products, and we're very confident that you'll be happy with the performance on your farm. And that's really, we can be that confident in that because we did have the extra two breeding cycles that we didn't really intend to have. If we had been able to launch in 2014 as planned, that would have been 2 years longer than we worked with Roundup Ready, the yield trait, in breeding before it came to launch. And so now with the extra 2 years, we're 4 years more breeding on the Xtend technology than what we had when we came out with Roundup Ready to yield when it first launched in 2009, I believe. So in a good spot from a germplasm standpoint. A lot of products available, wide range of maturities available. You can go into the group 0s and group 1s and down in the group 4s and 5s. So when Roundup Ready 2s first came out, it was pretty much just a group 3 thing for a couple of years. But with Xtend, we've got a much broader germplasm pool to work with. Next slide, please, Ann. So I guess I call this slide Back to the Future because there are a lot of things that I fully believe Roundup Ready to Xtend technology is going to be the future of soybean weed control, just like Roundup Ready to yield has been the base of soybean weed control for 20 years basically. But there's a lot of things that aren't necessarily going to change. We're going to continue to recommend soil residuals pre and post. Continue to use multiple, and I underline effective here, modes of action. A mode of action that if you talk about water hemp, virtually every water hemp plant out there is already resistant to ALS chemistry. So if you're throwing an ALS in with your herbicide program, feeling good about doing that because you're adding a mode of action, if the weed's already ALS resistant, that doesn't count as a mode of action. If the weed's already glyphosate resistant, then the glyphosate doesn't count as a mode of action. So if we're not using the residual products, basically we're using one mode of action, that being dicamba, to control water hemp, and that's not really a place that we want to be. So we're going to continue to recommend soil residuals both pre and post as part of the Roundup Ready to Xtend cropping system. Starting clean with good tillage or affected burndowns is very important. It's very frustrating. Every year we have a lot of fields that maybe you hit them with a vertical tillage tool in the spring, and it looks like you got some weed control out of that, but you really didn't get complete weed control out of that, and so you have a few stragglers that come through that. If you're still using a burn down, not putting 2,4-D in, because we got used to taking the 2,4-D out for several years, so we didn't have to worry about the plant back restrictions. Well, we're going to miss some mare's tail, we're going to miss some giant rag, we might miss some land squirter, we might miss some water hemp if it happens to be glyphosate resistant, and just making sure that the day we plant, the field is clean, gets us off to a good start. We need to control weeds when they're smaller. One thing that you may or may not be aware of is the Xtend formulations when they're available. Are going to currently Roundup is labeled through the R2 growing stage of soybeans. The dicamba formulations will be labeled through the R1 growth stage in soybeans. So we're going to cut those applications off one growth stage earlier over the top. We're going to encourage, spraying weeds when they're less than 4 inches tall. And, obviously, glyphosate can kill big weeds if they're not glyphosate resistant. Dicamba is not great on controlling big weeds. It has activity on large weeds, but its control is best on small weeds. And if you've got an 8-inch tall water hemp that's already resistant to glyphosate, it's asking a lot of that dicamba to take down that 8-inch tall water hemp if it's not getting any help from the Roundup. Now, if it's a susceptible 8-inch tall water hemp, both products are going to smoke it, no problem. But we're going to continue to educate and ask people to make earlier season applications, and the more residuals that we use, that's going to buy you some more time to make those applications by delaying that weed emergence. We're certainly going to want to use proper application methods to ensure good coverage, continue to do the things we know we need to do to minimize off-target movement, and then just as we've spent a lot of time talking here, always have to follow those pesticide labels and recommendations closely. Next slide, please, Ann. So just in review, I think we've kind of touched on, went through the status of the trait and grain approvals. Welcome any questions anybody might have on that. The status of the herbicide registrations. There's not a whole lot more I can add to that at this time, because like we talked about, we're waiting on EPA to take that next step and open that public comment period, and that's really what sets a lot of things in motion. And basically, until that starts, there's not really any progress being made on getting those formulations approved, and we would certainly like them to be like that process to get started, so we can get those products approved. We've supplied them with all the information they need. We're not really anticipating any issues. It's just a matter of getting the process started, and it's one of those things that the process can't end until it starts, and it needs to start. We touched on the stewardship expectations in 2016, and I just can't reiterate that enough. I was talking with someone one time, and they use the analogy of, well, isn't it kind of like speeding? You're not supposed to do it, but everybody does. And I said, well, I really don't think that's an appropriate analogy for following a pesticide label. It's important that we all follow those labels, and I know it's tempting to try to utilize a product to help you with a tough weed control problem, but it's just really not worth the risk to you as a producer and to your crop and to your retail applicator that either sold you the product or maybe applied the product for you. From a registrant standpoint, from Monsanto's perspective, it's just not someplace that we need to be. So I'm currently hammering this point pretty hard with all my salesmen and all of our dealers that this isn't a wink and nod and look the other way kind of thing. This is something we're going to take very seriously, and we're going to trust our producers to do the right thing, but we need to make sure that we're making them aware of how important it is to do the right thing, and give them the strength that they need to say no to somebody that might want to do the wrong thing. Talked about weed management strategies for this year and some of the typical programs that people will be recommending. We're very confident through the Roundup Ready Plus cropping system with the pre and post residuals and overlapping residuals and multiple modes of action and tank mixtures. We can get good weed control with current Roundup Ready technology. We don't have to have Roundup Ready to Xtend to get good weed control. Now, it'll be a little easier, perhaps, to get good weed control with the Xtend system, and I'm certainly looking forward to using it on my own farm in the future and get to simplify things a little bit. But it's not going to be like it was when Roundup first came out, where we just quit everything else we're doing and we switched to Roundup. We want to continue to do the good things that we've relearned how to do over the past 4 or 5 years, and just incorporate the Xtend technology and those new dicamba formulations into those systems. And then last and not least, we touched on the good reasons for planting Xtend beans in 2016, even if you don't have that herbicide piece to go with it, and that would really just be to get the newest, best genetics with the most yield potential, and have an opportunity to look at those varieties on maybe 10 or 15 or 20% of your acres this year, just in case you are contemplating maybe switching 100% of your acres to the Xtend cropping system in 2017. And I know from conversations I have with farmers, there's a lot of farmers that hey, if the herbicide's ready to go And if the system's priced right and the varieties perform good, yeah, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't just switch to that. So I think there's a lot of people that it would make sense to, take a look at those varieties this year, see which ones you like, which ones you don't like, which ones fit your operation, which ones don't. And then, there's obviously going to be new products as well coming into the marketplace in 17, like there always are. But a lot of probably 80% of the volume of Xtend soybeans that we're going to have available in 2017 are the same good products that you have the ability to plant in 2016. So if you plant 3 or 4 of the products that are available today, good chance those are some of the ones that you're going to be planting again on more acres in 2017. So with that, Ann, I think that's about all I wanted to touch on. So I think we've got some time left. I hope there's some questions. If there's not, I probably didn't do a very good job stimulating questions, but I'll kick it back to you.
Great. Thank you very much for the information. We did have a couple questions submitted in advance, and I think those were covered in your presentation. We do have a question for you. Does the current germplasm metabolize dicamba easily, or is there any injury to the resistant varieties?
No, the crop safety of the dicamba technology is phenomenal. They're probably, well, not probably, they are more tolerant to dicamba than they are to Roundup. So the crop safety is probably as good as I've ever seen on any trait that we've worked with, and that crop safety exists both pre-emergent and post-emergent. So we can use extremely high rates of dicamba if we want to get longer residual and to get tough weeds and to help with weed resistance management. So the rates of dicamba that we're going to be recommending typically are a 1 pint rate. So if you think about a full pint or 16 ounces of clarity would be the equivalent of what we'll be recommending in these systems. That's a big slug of dicamba. We've never used that much in corn, and these soybeans are extremely tolerant to dicamba. So very, very good crop safety, and so we're used to good crop safety with Roundup Ready system, and the Roundup Ready to Xtend system is going to have equally good, if not better, crop safety. And so appreciate the question.
I know that you commented, or you talked about the comment period opening and that you didn't have an exact timeline, but can you clarify if there is any estimated time for getting the label approved for spraying over the top of soybeans?
Unfortunately, there's really not an estimated time until the comment period starts. I can walk through, if it started tomorrow, let's say, which it probably won't, but if it did, you can make some assumptions of when they might be through the process based on this might happen or that might happen. It's extremely speculative, maybe to the point of not being very valuable. But the comment period is 30 days. Very often these days, comment periods are extended. So sometimes, very often there'll be a second comment period. Occasionally there'll be a third comment period. They can have as many comment periods as they choose to have based on the amount of comments they're getting. We're expecting there'll be a lot of comments, so we're anticipating at least 2. So there's 60 days. If there's no lag in between the 2 comment periods. Once the comment period ends, and remind you, we don't know when it's going to start, we don't know how long it's going to be, but once it ends, then there's a 30-day review period for them to review all of the comments that they get. So now we're up to 90 days. After that review, they will, let me see, what's the word I'm looking for? If the review finds nothing that requires any additional follow-up or inquiry, then they post a 30-day notice. So now we're up to 120 days. So at the end of that 30-day notice, when it expires, the federal registration, which would be the federal label, is posted. And after that, the state labeling, state registration can be pursued. Some states are fairly automatic. Once you got your federal, the state just, boom, it goes. Other states are a little more difficult, but that state process usually flows, fairly predictably after you get your federal label. But, if it started, if the comment period started tomorrow, we're probably minimum of 120 days away from a federal label, and more than that away from a state label. To my knowledge, all the dicamba formulations, whether they're coming from Monsanto or BASF, are in the same boat there. So I think once one product is approved, I think the others will all probably fairly quickly come along. But if you start to do the math on that, even if it started tomorrow, we're already past the prime post-emergence application season, well past burndown, obviously, and so you're probably looking at, maybe if you had some late planted beans, or we have seed production acres that get planted in June every year that come back from winter nurseries. I think probably the most likely scenario would be, maybe some late planted fields. We could possibly have a label in time for those, but for the bulk of the acres, we're prepared, not to have a product label in time for post-emergence applications on the bulk of normal planted acres.
Thank you for clarifying that. I think that's all the questions that we have. If anyone is interested in sending in questions that you think of after the presentation, we can work on getting those answered for you. You can send those to ahork@charlestonorwig.com, or you can just reply to your invite from GoToWebinar, and we will receive those as well. So that concludes our webinar on Roundup Ready 2 Xtend soybeans in 2016 and beyond. We'd like to thank Lance for presenting and sharing that information with us. You will find this webinar and other soybean and agronomic resources on the checkoff-funded website, ilsoyadvisor.com. So we just want to thank you for attending and hope you have a great day.